Here is a quick flip through of my sketchbook from 2024, starting April 2024 and going through April 2025. This is a Ranger sketchbook, which is made by Delusions. And because I use this sketchbook over and over again, the same brand, I label it on the back like that. And this year, I collected stickers of the place I went in my travels. This is kind of a travel sketchbook, and I like this sketchbook because of the thickness of the paper. So just to start out, I have a really hard time finding white ink to do my highlights. And so I tried a bunch of different Papermate, Pentel, and I just kind of collected them right there. I never found one that worked for very long, so I'm still on the search for it. So we started off the year by doing a RV trip down to the Forgotten Coast of Florida, which is on the Gulf Coast side of Florida. And on the way, we stopped at this new kind of gas station they have in the United States called Buc-ees, and it's just huge. This is the first time we'd ever seen one. We pulled our RV through there and had some pecans and enjoyed the experience. I did, while we were driving, I did the sketch and pencil, and then when we got to our location, I finished it with pen. But I'm glad I did the sketch of the dashboard of our 2003 GMC pickup truck, because this is the last trip that we would have taken with it, because we just got a new truck. It was such an old truck that it didn't even have a way to plug in your MP3s. We had all kinds of cords going everywhere, a tire minder, Easy Pass, all of our iPhones plugged in. This is Carabelle. There was a Harry's bar. This is an old ice packing facility. There's a pizza joint across the street from it, and we were eating pizza there, and I sat out on their deck and I sketched this. This is Apalachicola, Florida, where we ate at the grill. My husband had chocolate cake there, and then I walked over to the beach from the campground. This is the view of Dog Island on Carabelle Beach, Florida, and I watched a little boy down there playing with his wagon and did a sketch while I sat on the beach. Did a couple of lighthouse sketches. This was just Crooked River Lighthouse in Carabelle Beach, and I could ride my bike from the campground down there, and so I rode down there every day, and I did a sketch of that. And then this was a full moon climb over on St. George's Island. That was a really cool lighthouse as well. The Forgotten Coast is Route 98 that goes along the coast from St. Mark's to Mexico Beach. We rode that on our motorcycles several times and listened to Oyster Radio, and they have a song. It is all about Apalachicola and all the different names there, and we listened to it so many times. They played it so many times that I wrote the words to it in the water. And that's kind of just shows all the places that we went while we were there. This is an oyster boat that was at the Equestrian Research Reserve in East Point, Florida. And this is the RV resort we stayed in. They had rows of cabins, and I thought they were all these pastel colors, and there was all kinds of people fishing. It is kind of deserted by the crowd. Here I collected these on St. George's Island. I watched a video by Roisin Cure of her doing seashells, and I kind of tried to copy her style there with the shadows. She's a big influence on me. I have a few quotes I heard on the radio. It looks like I was trying out new pens. We're cleaning out my parents' house. They lived in the same house for 60 years, and there's all kinds of just vintagey items in their house. And I was trying to, as we move them on to their next home, I've done a lot of sketches of them. So that's throughout this sketchbook. This is plastic flowers that was in their bedroom for probably 40 years. And so I did a little sketch of those. This is the croquet set that's downstairs. A 1950s croquet set. Very rusty. This is waiting outside for my daughter to come out at the old federal courthouse. It's watching The Lion King downtown Columbus, Ohio at night. And I had to sit out there and wait for her to come out. And so while I was waiting, I put the row of link system is going through the sky that night. And so I threw that up into the sky. I want to mention that most of the sketches in here are done with watercolor and waterproof ink, and my attempts at many kinds of white highlight pens. Sometimes I used acrylic markers as well. This is a trip that I took with a sketching buddy. This is my sketching buddy, Lori, and we drove from West Virginia to Georgia, South Georgia, and we sketched along the way. Here we are sketching at the Grind in Wytheville, Virginia, and looking out at the Bowling Wilson Hotel. This is another shop we ate at, probably a barbecue. Yeah, Willie Jewell's Barbecue. This is Jonah's Fish and Grits, where my friend Lori loved that place so much we ate there several times. She always ordered the same thing. Downtown Thomasville, Georgia, Jonah's Fish and Grits. We also went to the Big Oak in Thomasville, Georgia. This is a huge live oak tree. My grandfather built this gazebo back here, and he built that probably in the 1960s. This is a closer up of the gazebo built by Daddy Pop, the Big Oak Park in Thomasville, Georgia. We stayed at Pebble Hill Plantation, which is used to be a hunting plantation, and now it is a historical spot that you can stop and see the way people used to live on these plantations. They had horses. There's a horse sticking his head out right here of this stable. We enjoyed sitting out and listening to the horses and sketching around the plantation. We actually stayed in an Airbnb that they have on the property. They have a carriage house that has tons of old carriages in it. When I get home tonight, we will finish this up, but it's just very rough. But that's kind of the method that works, is just to get a good start on location and then go home with your table and a good setup and finish the details. So that's what we're going to do. This is one that was Eisenhower carriage, because President Eisenhower came here at one point and he rode in this particular carriage. Here we are in the courtyard and painting the fishing pond. And Lori is using her Neocolor crayons. And it has a little statue here. It's kind of a place where time has stood still. It's a beautiful place to visit. This is another view looking into the courtyard from these iron gates. This again is the fish pond, the boy statue that stands on the fish pond. I did a study of him just by himself, and that turned out really cute. Continuing with watercolor here. This was some of the flowers, lily of the Nile, on my grandparents' front porch of their apartment. Got eaten up by mosquitoes while I drew that. This is a mule. They had two mules there. One was Kate and one was Tim. I couldn't tell them apart, but they wore these shields on their faces and their feet to keep themselves from getting eaten alive with flies. This is the main house of Pebble Hill. We took a tour of the main house, and then we sat out in the yard. I actually bought a saddle blanket. They play polo there, and they have blankets for the horse to go under your saddle. And I bought one so I could lay it out on the lawn, and that's where I sat to sketch. And I thought it'd be a great sketching blanket. Keeps the red ants off of you. If they bite you, they really hurt. This is a boot scraper at the porch of the main house. I remember this as a child. It's an iron boot scraper. This is probably a bloodhound dog. They have all kinds of art that has to do with dogs and horses all over this plantation. Here's another view of the Southern Scratch Kitchen, Donna's, where Lori loved to eat, and she ordered pretty much the same thing every time, and her plate was much more interesting than mine. She would get the grouper Brussels sprouts, garlic potatoes, and hush puppies and a Greek salad, and she just wanted to keep going back there. This is a dog hospital, which was next door to the place that we stayed. The little house was over here that we stayed in, and so we sat out here in the sunset one night and sketched the dog hospital. But this was a plantation for hunting dogs as well as the horses. And so the grounds were full of the sound of hunting dogs. The next trip that we took, so this was in June, this is July of 2024, and we camped down on the Hocking River RV Park in Logan, Ohio. Very primitive campground. But the Hocking River runs by it, and the whole day long you see kayakers and canoers going past. So we would just sit out at our camper and watch. Here's another view of the river. There was a rope swing that the kids would swing out, and everyone had a dog on. Not everybody, but there were so many dogs going down the river. This was July. It was hot, and people were enjoying the river. Here is a kayaker by herself in Logan with her dog. This is a church that is in Johnstown, Ohio, which is close to Logan. We drove up there while we were at this campground. And all the cars in the parking lot. There's my little yellow Kia right there. Very old church. Is over 100 years old, the building. This is just a study of the surface of the river, and for this I used, there's a layer of watercolor, and then on top of it I used my acrylic markers to do the reflections. I was just kind of a little abstract that I got in. Then also in July, the end of the weekend, we drove up to Port Clinton, Ohio, where we spent a few days in a campground there. And this is the lighthouse keeper and his dog up Port Clinton, Ohio, a brass statue and a little tiny Lake Erie lighthouse. I have a palette of metallic watercolor, and I used it here on this guy. Here's the Bootleggers close to Port Clinton. It's actually on the water, and we walked over there and sat on the dock of the bay, and then we drove over for lunch to the 10 Goose Diner in Port Clinton, and that's where you can eat your lunch, and it's this old-fashioned 1950s diner, and watch the airplanes come and go. So while we were there, we babysat my grandkids, and so I did a little sketch just so we could remember that they were there too. So Sunday after we got back, I was able to go out with the Columbus Urban Sketchers group, and we sketched here in Utica, Ohio. It's an old 1817 building, and they've been making ice cream there for many years, and it has a water wheel. These are some sketches I did at Ohio Regional Urban Sketchers Summit. This was out at 3rd and Main Street in Dayton, and another of our teachers, he did a demo, and I did it the same way as he did the fire hydrants. I do like to sketch fire hydrants. They had the stamps, or after we got back to the library at the end of the day, we could stamp our sketches. St. John's Cathedral in Dayton. Here's another of St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Dayton. Okay, here I am back at my parents' house in Virginia later in the year, and sketching some of the things that we're having to move out. These are some of the high chairs that me and my sister sat on back in the 60s. And those high stairs are still down in the basement, so I did a little sketch of those. This is their telephone. They still have their original telephone that they had when they moved into the house in 1965. And it still works. These are some little piggy banks that were given to us. The Bradley Bank of Tomahawk, Wisconsin gave these piggy banks out to the babies that were born to their customers, and those are still downstairs in our basement. This is the cover on the bottom that you can pry off. So I enjoy getting a sketch of that. Some of my favorite toys. This was on my birthday in August. My daughters, this is my daughter Cheney and my daughter Tansy, they took me to Creekside and Gahanna, and we took the paddle boats out, and I sketched, and they did the hard work of pedaling the paddle boat up the creek. That was what I requested for my birthday adventure. This is at Cooper Knoll Farm in Pataskala, Ohio, and it's kind of one of those, she calls it a bougie farm. It's very clean and very picturesque, and it's just meant to showcase the animals, and they have over 100 animals there. So there's the pigs, and they have dogs that guard each of the fenced-in areas for all of their animals. This is actually their house, the house that they live in. So it was really neat to go out and see this property after it's been finished, and their dreams are coming true out at Cooper Knoll Farm in Pataskala, Ohio. That same weekend, there was a Koto ensemble at the Gahanna Metro Library. This trio of ladies put on quite a performance for us, so I got to do some people. And here we are back at Gina and Richard's farm at Cooper Knoll Farm, and that's Gina and her husband in their Ranger going around doing their chores. And I went with my sister and an old friend, Jill, down around Kissimmee and Orlando. I had the Jiffy Burger at Ford's Garage. That's a great place to sketch. We also met my nieces in Lake Mary, Florida, at the Crazy Greek Kitchen, had iced tea, met my new grand niece back there, who had just been born a few weeks ago, ate with my sister and her daughters. We ate at the Juicy Crab. As you can see, this is a theme. We had time to sketch when we were eating. The Juicy Crab, where they brought out these boiled, and the huge bags are all puffed up, these huge low country boils. And this is in Orlando, Florida. That was awesome. This crab was hanging on the wall. It was a huge plastic crab, but on my sketchbook, he looks like the real thing. So, like I say, everybody looks better in a sketch than they do in real life, including that plastic crab right there. Here's the lexicon from our Florida and October vacation. I wrote all the places we went, some of the discussions that we had with Becky and Jill at the villas at Regal Palms in Davenport, Florida. Jill and Becky out underneath the umbrella. Holiday Sketching Summit 2024. This was cozy. I did one of her Tuesday classes, it looks like. Here's some of my favorite artists that I follow, and I just scratched their names down. This is a fig palm, and I did that while I was in Florida, kind of in the style of Roisin Curie. Now we've gotten here to Thanksgiving in 2024 in Lynchburg. My whole family kind of met together at my parents' old house, and this is the dough bowl that my grandmother, or maybe my great-grandmother, and maybe my great-great-grandmother had, that they'd made dough in. It's a huge wooden tray, probably about 18-inch long, and my sister-in-law makes beautiful arrangements in there, and so I enjoyed sketching that. This is back to Pebble Hill Plantation. This is one of the place settings they had there, and I used my gold watercolor and silver watercolor on this. I was inspired by Paul Brown's painting at Pebble Hill. This is a scene of a bloodhound meeting a horse at the stables. So I kind of skipped all the way from October to April of 2025. Very sadly, I didn't sketch much, but I met my sketch friend Lori, and we went to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So we ate at the Coffee Grinder, and that's where I met Lori. There was a collapse of this bridge, the Silver Bridge, back in the 60s, and a lot of people died from it, and they rebuilt a memorial bridge in its place. And so that's kind of what the town is infamous for. And so we went over and sketched the bridge in the rain. It rained on us. This is a little bird that we saw. It's positioned on a window inside the park. I thought it was a really pretty composition. Tried to throw that together. But what this little town is really known for in Point Pleasant is the Mothman. The Mothman is a legend of a creature that came and warned people about this bridge collapse. There is so much museums and commerce. There's actually video games about the Mothman. So this statue is in the center of town. So of course we had to sketch the Mothman. And there were shops up and down the street. We spent the whole day sketching and shopping in Point Pleasant. And then back to my parents' house in Lynchburg. This was at Easter. I did a buddy sketch with a friend, and this is the way my sister-in-law had that dough bowl decorated for Easter. So she had a new season and a different arrangement in the dough bowl. And then finally, we started off on a vacation down to Florida, and I finished up the sketchbook on this vacation. This is our camper. This is the truck that we no longer have. We sold it right after this trip because it kept giving us problems. So I'm glad I painted it. And this is where we went camping at Jekyll Island, Driftwood Beach. We stayed at the RV campground there. And there were many, many beautiful live oak trees on Jekyll Island. This is at the campground there. Two of the first warships commissioned by the U.S. Navy in 1794 were built from live oak trees from Jekyll Island in Jekyll Island, Georgia. It's a little map of our locations. So that is my sketchbook from April 2024 till April of 2025. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the things that we did.